Hi guys, welcome to episode 47 of the Knitting Expat Podcast. My name is Mina and welcome. Today is Wednesday the 3rd of February 2016 and welcome to all of you who have decided to come and join me today. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me, and just wanted to say welcome to all new and returning viewers. If it's your first time checking me out, thank you so much. And if you are coming back, well, thank you for coming back. I really appreciate it. Just word of warning, I wasn't able to print my show notes today. There's a problem with our printer. So if I keep glancing over that way, it's because I'm looking at my computer screen where my show notes are. Just wanted to let you know. Right. Places you can find me. You can find me on Ravelry as Mina86. You can find the podcast group on Ravelry as Knitting Expat Podcast. You can find me on Instagram as Mina Phillip, and you can find my Etsy shop where I sell project bags that I make as is Mina Makes on Etsy. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Show notes. Show notes you can find at knittingexpat.wordpress.com. I think that pretty much covers everything. Wherever this video is posted, there are links below in the description box on YouTube and on the blog and on the podcast group on Ravelry to all the other places that you can find me and everything I've just mentioned, so you should be able to find it. First of all, I wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone who answered last week's collection of questions about sock knitting and gauge. It was really interesting to read all of your answers and to read your thoughts on the topic as well. And I'll be coming on to that topic a little bit more later in this episode. Secondly, I just wanted to announce that I did issue an update to the Across the Pond shawl pattern. The actual pattern itself hasn't changed. There's no modifications to the pattern. It's I've added a bit of extra detail around how to do the textured stitch in the main body. It seems quite a few people weren't quite clear on how that was supposed to be done. I did have it explained in the show notes, in the pattern, in the abbreviation section, but some people were still having trouble with that one. So I've added in a bit more of a detailed explanation on how to do that. So hopefully, if you've been struggling with that update will help you. So if you haven't already gone and checked it out, make sure you go and check out the update and let me know if you're having any further problems with it. I have to say, this is kind of one of the reasons why, as designers, you get patterns tested, I imagine. I have my patterns tested for a variety of reasons. One, to make sure that, someone else can replicate what I've done, because, I can write out my notes and on how I do a pattern in my own kind of shorthand that I understand, but no one else is going to understand it. So I think the real trick with writing a pattern is writing it in such a way that anyone can understand it and follow it. Which is why I like to get my patterns tested by a variety of people with a variety of skill sets. So if, for example, I've designed a shawl, I'll ask some people, or I'll have people test it who are experienced shawl knitters and people who are either beginner knitters or beginners with shawls, like haven't knit shawls before, or it's only like the second or third one, because then you get a variety of different skill levels, looking at your pattern to let you know where and when, to make sure it makes sense to a variety of different people. Let me just see, there was something else I was going to say about this as well. Yeah, I've actually found that I get some of the most meaningful feedback in terms of things that I need to change and things that I then go on to change based on the feedback that I get. I get the most valuable feedback, I think, from new knitters or knitters who are new to, for example, shawl knitting, if that's the pattern they're testing. I find that level of feedback is actually really, really good, because I am no longer a newbie. I hate air quotes, but I'm no longer a newbie knitter, as it were. So even though I've only been knitting for a couple of years, I've knit so much that I'm not really considered a new knitter anymore. So the way I see things is completely different to how others see them. So yeah, that's kind of why I get my patterns tested. But as it happened with this one, I think I had this pattern tested by 7 different people. No one had an issue with the description on how to do the list, or on how to do the stitch the way I had it initially. So didn't think it needed to be changed. But since publishing the pattern, it seems that it's quite a common question that's come up in the last month. So I've gone ahead and issued the update. So hopefully that will make it clearer for most of you now how to do that. Right, so that tangent aside, let's move on to the main podcast. I have a very packed episode for you guys today. As you saw my giant box of socks at the beginning, I will be coming to that in a second. But first of all, I'll be talking about podcasts that I've been enjoying, finished objects, a little bit of a recap over this last month and how January has gone, works in progress, what else was there on the list? Works in progress, needle adjacent projects, cows and giveaways. We have a very big section for this one this week. I have a lot of prizes to give out and announce, and we have a new knit along that started, and I have another new thing to talk to you guys about. Then we have questions and answers, and then I have a little section where I want to talk about my thoughts on socks and my experience with how my socks have worn so far. I've been knitting socks for a year now, just over a year now, so I thought I'd give a bit of reflection on how some of my socks have worn. A little bit of other things, some shop news of which there is none, acquisitions, and a little knitter's tip section on how I wind my mini skeins, and finally a bit of a week in review, which is quite short this week. Right, I'm sorry about the sniffles. I think I might be getting sick, so bear with me. If it gets really bad, I'll pause and come back. Right, so first up with podcasts. I've only got one to share with you this week just because it's such a packed episode, but I really wanted to mention this one, and that's the Reluctant Sisters podcast. And that's with Sarah and Adrian, and they are so hilarious. These are the girls who I met when I went up to Connecticut for the day recently, and they came down to meet me in New York in September last year when I was there. We hung out then as well, and it's just so much fun to spend time with them. And then when I was with them in Connecticut recently, they were talking about starting a podcast, or rather Adrian was trying to convince Sarah to do a podcast together, and it's quite funny. So their name stems from the fact that Sarah is the reluctant podcaster. She didn't really want to do a podcast, and Adrian is the reluctant knitter because she didn't initially want to knit, but then I think Sarah got tired of knitting things for her, so she learnt to knit. So I just thought that was really quite funny with the name as well. And they are hilarious. They are their personality on the podcast is very much what their personality is like in real life. And I just love their sense of humour. So make sure you do check them out, and they will be linked in the show notes. Right, so let's move on to finished objects. There are a lot of socks in this box. Just kind of want to sit here and caress them. Yeah, so this was actually a kitten box, a cat box that I had in my craft room, which I cleaned out and is now housing these socks. They won't be in here beyond today, but right. So I am just going to go through and pick out the socks that are new for this week. I think that is all of them. So another 8 pairs of socks this last week. Right, I'll do them in the order I have them in my show notes, but this isn't the order in which they were finished, I don't believe. No, I'm pretty sure they weren't finished in this order. So first up are these socks, and I'll pop one onto a blocker. I'll try not to clang the sock blockers around too much this week. I'm sorry about that last time. So this is the spun right round in her snappy sock space. So this is 75% Corriedale, 25% nylon, and this is in her graffiti overlay colourway. And I just did this with my standard 2x2 rib, fish's kiss heel, rounded toe. Or my version of a rounded toe. It's just slightly more rounded than a wedge toe. It's not a star toe that some people do. And pretty much that is how I have knit all my socks that I'm showing you this week, so I'm not going to keep repeating that. And this is based on my Mina's 2 at a time sock pattern. Then next up, I have Patterns Croy. Ooh, dropped one. Alright, sorry, I clanged. And dropped the sock blocker. Sorry about that. So next up we have Pants Croy. This is in the Sweet Stripes colourway. I remember I was saying last week how the colours didn't quite match. Well, you can sort of see here that the darker purple on this sock is slightly lighter than the other sock. And yeah, and they started out being perfectly matchy at the top, and then as it got further down, they don't line up anymore. Even towards the end, you can see the toes are different. It's not that big a deal, and I really don't think the person I'll be gifting them to will mind. Those are those. Then next up, these have to be some of my favourite socks. I love this colourway. This is Wool Bearers in their Woolly Bear sock base, and this is the Wisteria colourway. So I think this is 80% merino, 20% nylon. And yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. I love the colours. Honestly, if I had to pick a skein of yarn or a pair of socks that represented me in terms of colours, this would be it. These are my absolute favourite colours. As much as I love orange and blue, and I love like green, yellow and grey, purple and green will always be my thing. Very much my thing. And I purposely stuck a garter heel in these, so I'd end up keeping them for myself, because I don't really want to gift socks with a garter heel to people until I know how they wear. So yeah, so these are going to be for me. Next up, I have this beautiful pair of socks. Talking about orange and blue. Also loving these. So this is Zia Wool's yarn on her Sandia base. And this is the Pomuckles Party. And this is, sorry, can't remember the content of this. I think it was 80-20. And this is quite a high twist yarn. It's produced quite a nice dense sock. And I love the stitch definition on this one. I think this yarn would be perfect for like cables and textured stitches. And yeah, I really liked it. I love this one. Really, really. This one's also going to be for me. I'm not sharing this one. And this is the second sock. Next up, I have my flax socks. This is Pants Croy flax. Nice, simple, plain socks. So nice and easy. And again, it's the second sock. I'm only putting one on the sock blockers just to save time, because otherwise I'll be sat here faffing for ages. Next up, I have Barocco socks. This is one I picked up in Connecticut. And this is, yeah, this is colourway number 1426. I just like the greens and blues and yellows, and thought it was a nice sort of manly set of colours. It doesn't have to be just for a guy, just thought it was good for that. Then next up I have these Cascade Heritage socks, and this is colourway number 1, Hawks. Heritage Prince, I think it was. This is one of the ones I picked up in New York from Annie & Co. This is actually one of my shortest pair of socks that I've knit this week. But even so, the foot is still shorter than the cuff length, which is usually kind of my standard measurement for my socks. I always make sure that the cuff is going to be longer than the foot. Then I have this pair, which was out of Lane Cervinia, Forever, I think was also on the tag. And this is in colour number 46. And this one, it was quite interesting because without even trying, and I will put both of these on blockers so you can see it more clearly, I started both from the centre pull, and I pulled from the centre. And as I was knitting, I realised that these stripe in the opposite direction. So it seems that the skeins were wound in opposite directions when they were being skeined up. So that was quite fun and unintentional, but it's good because they kind of match without being directly matching. I quite like how these turned out. I like the mottled, slightly mild rainbow effect that they give. So yeah, pretty chuffed with those. And that are the 8 socks that I finished in the last few days of the sockathon. Just sort myself out for a second. Sorry about that. About this, rather. Should be there in just a moment. Yeah. It's a lot of socks. I will fold them up and pop them back in the box in a second. Yeah, so that's 35 pairs of finished socks in the month of January. Marsha, I have to say, Marsha from the Very Little Twitch and Stitch podcast, amazing competitor. Honestly, I don't think I would have been able to keep going if it wasn't for her keeping me on my toes. She was constantly on my heels with the sock knitting, always right there on par, basically. We were pretty much neck and neck the whole way through. I think at one point I was like 2 socks ahead of her, but then I also have like an 11-hour head start on her. Like my days, we did it where we both started midnight January 1st until midnight Feb 1st was our time frame for our own local time zone. So so it was fair in that respect. But yeah, it was awesome. I don't think I would have been able to keep going at the pace that I was going if I didn't have so much support from you guys. You guys were seriously amazing. Thank you so much for all of your support and encouragement and lovely comments and just everything. It was just incredible. This month was insane. I had a few people comment on Instagram, actually quite a few people comment saying that asking about if this could be entered into the Guinness Book of Records, or is there a world record for something like this? And I looked it up because I was curious. I looked it up. There isn't a Guinness World Record for the number of socks, like speed of knitting socks or anything like that. The closest thing was the fastest knitter, and the fastest knitter in the world, crazy, can knit 118 stitches in a minute. That's like twice my speed. I think I'm around 60 stitches a minute if I go really quickly. I think, if that makes sense. Yeah, about that. Because a round on a sock takes me anywhere between 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. And so, yeah, that sort of works out roughly around 60 to 70 stitches a minute is my speed. 118 stitches a minute. Ridiculous. I have no idea how fast her fingers must move. But yeah, so there isn't one. But I looked into it. You can't apply retrospectively, so you'd have had to have applied for the record attempt prior to actually starting and have it approved, because they have a list of, I guess they set the criteria for how you prove that you've done it. And I'm not entirely sure how you would prove this, because unless you had someone physically witness it the whole time, every time you pick up the needles to knit, it would be quite hard to prove to like the level that they would require, I'd imagine, that, I hadn't cheated or someone else hadn't cheated. So it's interesting, but no, there is no record and I can't apply for it. Well, I can't apply for it anyway because Marsha and I tied. So, because she also knit 35 socks, which was pretty awesome. And I think a tie was actually possibly the best outcome for this month. No one loses and everyone's a winner, which is awesome. I thought I'd go over the socks that I am deciding to keep for myself. But before I do that, I'm going to take a quick break and I will be back with you. Right, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so which socks am I keeping? Which socks am I giving away? Thought I'd show you some of them to begin with. I think these are the ones I'm going to be keeping for myself. This one was the one I used knit out of Zazu yarns in the Magic Dust colorway. This one I'm keeping because of the design. It's a design I'm thinking of writing up to publish. This one is the pants croy that I knit out of the Celestial and Coal colourway. I'm keeping because it's a mismatched pair, and I don't have a pair of pants croy socks, and I think they'd be really good, thick, warm socks to have. This pair of West Yorkshire spinners out of the Kingfisher colourways, one of their bird colourways. I'll tell you a bit more about what I think about the West Yorkshire spinners yarn a bit later in the episode, but I'm keeping this more because I really like the colours. And I actually don't have that many commercial yarn socks in my stash. So this one is Vollenvine yarns on her Footsie base, which is BFL, which is the BFL nylon blend, and this is the Outlander colourway, which I love. I love this colourway. Totally marries my love of blue and orange together. Never seen Outlander. Love that colourway though. Another pants croy pair. This is the blue stripe rag. I have another 2 balls of this to knit up a pair of socks for my mum, so we have matching socks. But these ones are for me. This is the custom colourway that Andy dyed up for me for a swap that we did, and this is Andy of Andre Sue Knits, sorry, and she has an Etsy shop by the same name. She hand dyes yarn as well as podcasts. This is her OMG BFL base, which is a BFL cashmere silk blend, which is beautifully soft and beautiful for socks, I think. Really like how these are knit up as well. Then this is yarn by Shabbat Garn, another German indie dyer, and this is their Lavender Horizon colourway. I love this colour. I was going to do these as gift socks, but I don't think I could part with them. I really love how these have knit up, and one sock has come up with a bit more purple in it than the other, but I don't care. And I really like this sort of like spiral pooling going on. And again, this texture pattern I think is going to be part of a sock pattern thing that I'm thinking of releasing at some point. Knit Picks Felici in the Time Traveller colourway. This is the only pair of Felici socks that I'm keeping for myself because I like this colourway the most. I have to say, after having knit all the Felici, I had like 6 pairs of socks worth of Felici, and I've knit them all now. I am not overly impressed with the Felici colourways. Like, they're not that, the colours aren't that well defined. This one was the best out of all of them, but on all the other socks, either 2 of the colours were so close together that they basically looked like one colour, and so you ended up with what looked like one really extra thick stripe of a light colour, or some of the lighter shades, I don't have another one handy, I put them away, what ended up being quite muddy with like, it's like dye had transferred and the dye process hadn't been done correctly or something, and that, you know, the lighter stripe was muddy with other colours in there as well, and it didn't look quite right because it didn't look like it was done on purpose. It looked like a mistake. So I haven't been overly impressed, and I generally, after having knit with both the Felici and the Stroll yarn, I think Stroll is softer. Just my opinion. The other one I'm keeping, which I mentioned earlier, was the Zia Walls in the Pomuckles Party, which I really liked. And I really like the fabric from this one. This was one of my favourites in terms of the fabric it made. And the last one I'm keeping, which I also originally mentioned, was the Wool Bearers in the Wisteria. This is so lovely, and this is really nice and soft. It's a lot softer than what I thought it would be when it was in the skein. And I'm really, really happy with that one. Yeah, so that's 9 new pairs to go into my pile of socks in my wardrobe, and I have pulled out my existing socks to show you later in the episode when I go over my experience with my socks, and I only have 9 pairs, so I've literally doubled my socks. These 4 are going to be going to my to Perry's family, so this will be for his sister, his dad, his mum, and his sister's fiance. So so that's the flax colorway for my sister-in-law's fiance. I I'm not entirely sure on his colour scheme and what he likes. So I thought a nice plain neutral pair of socks would be a good place to start. I've never given him a pair of socks before, so we'll see. I'm not entirely sure on his foot size, but these fit me, and I have generally got pretty large feet, so hopefully, fingers crossed, that will be fine. This is the cameo colourway, which is going to be for his mum because she likes pinks and purples. For his dad, Clover colours. His birthday's in March, so I kind of thought this fit in with the whole St. Patrick's Day theme. And his name is Patrick as well because he was born on St. Patrick's Day, so I thought that was appropriate. And this one, these the sweet stripes for his sister because, again, she likes these sorts of colours, I think. So I think it should be fine. And again, Patterns Croy, across the board, easy care, easy, hard-wearing socks. And I found they sort of messaged me, was it about a week or two ago, to say how handy the socks had come in, the socks I'd gifted them for Christmas. So they've been wearing them all the time because it's been so cold. And that's always great to hear. So they get more socks. Perry is going to London in a couple of days for his next round of classes, and he's actually going a couple of days earlier than he normally would. So he's going to be spending the weekend with his family. He normally stays the weekend here and then goes like the day before he has classes. This time he's decided to go a couple of days earlier and spend some time with his family, hence why he's going to be taking socks with him. Then I have socks that I've set aside for now, just 2, but there are more in that stack of socks that I've made that are going to go to my family. I don't want to gift them all now because then I won't have anything left for later for other times that I might want to, and just keep some back in case. So these 2 are going to be for my brother. They're both Patterns Croy socks. Hopefully he will like them. I have another pair of socks planned for him for his birthday because his birthday is also in March. So these will be for him. Then for my dad, I have this pair of Patterns Croy socks. I knit him a pair of socks for his birthday, which were like the Crazy Zalbable. It's like blues and reds and sort of greys and browns and stuff in it, and he loves those. He wears them all the time, more than in any of the other socks that I've made him. So I thought this would suit his colour palette quite nicely because he wears quite a bit of brown and reds and greys, and so he wears those socks a lot because he says it matches a lot of what he wears. So I'm thinking he'll like these as well. And there's some plain black and white ones, which I really like how these are striped. And I added some ribbing to these, so hopefully they snug a bit nicer on his foot. So we will see how those fit. And again, I have more set aside for my dad and my brother in the pile that I've knit, but for now they are only going to get these. And my mum is going to get socks. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about her. I'm just not going to show them on the podcast which ones I've set aside for her because she watches the podcast, and while she has seen me knit all of these socks, there is no reason why she has to know which ones are for her. So at least that will be a surprise, I hope. I also had a few people ask for me to show them my knitting journal. So this was the knitting journal that I started at the beginning of the year. And as you can tell, it's already full. There is actually, I think there's like 2 or 3 pages blank at the end of this book. So this is now, rather than becoming my 2016 knitting journal, it has become my January Sockathon journal, which is fine. And I'm going to show you one page randomly. So it's not a particularly detailed or particularly fancy knitting journal. It is very basic in how I do it. Like I said, I'm not overly fancy at all. Try and find a good example. Alright, here we go. This is what I've done. So you get the name of the yarn and colourway, when I cast on, when I cast off, and this is obviously all in January, so I didn't bother putting the month in, just put the numbers, how much the socks weighed, how much yarn I used, a very quick sort of recipe for my sock, for that particular sock, what I did. Every single pair of socks that I knit, I always changed a little something, and it is never the same. So it's either like, I've done a few extra rows or a few less rows than I normally do, or whatever. So just so I can keep track, and if I ever want to replicate a particular sock because it fit a particular way or whatever, then I can do that, and I know what differences are between the socks. I've got the tag, a little sample of the yarn stuck on, and that is pretty much what I do on every page. There's the one for the Lavender Horizon yarn that I did the textured socks with. It's, yeah, like I said, nothing particularly fancy at all. It's just a record for me to have. And I bought this notebook, actually, it's part of a set of 3 notebooks that I got when I was in New York in November. And so these are the other 2 that came in the set, which I really like. So I think these will be my next knitting notebooks. Probably this one next and then this one after, if I finish this one, which probably won't be all that hard to do for me anyway. There are 40 pages in each of these notebooks, so like I said, 35 are full. And I've written some other notes on the last few pages as well. Yeah, so that's how it's gone so far. It's pretty good. I've enjoyed this month. I've took a day off of knitting on Monday. It was great. I didn't knit a single thing on Monday. It felt weird. I have to admit, it did feel weird. I kept reaching for my knitting and it wasn't there. So that was funny. But yeah, that I think pretty much summarizes everything that I wanted to talk about the socks. If you do have any questions specifically about the sockathon and all this sort of stuff, then please leave me a comment in the episode thread or in the questions and suggestions thread in the Ravelry group, and I will try to answer them next week. Right, I'm going to take a quick break again so I can rearrange my stuff, and I'll come back with whips and needle adjacent projects. Right, okay, I'm back again. Sorry about all the cutting and stuff. I realised I actually have a lot of things to show you guys this week, so I keep having to take breaks to rearrange my desk and move stuff off and bring new stuff in, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to fit everything in and it would just be a complete nightmare. Right, so works in progress. First thing I have to show you is in one of my Mina Makes bags. This is actually a linen fabric that I really liked. And I have this awesome little badge on here that says work in progress. This was from the lovely ladies at Post Stitch, who I met when I was in New York at Vogue Knitting Live. And in here I have a design project. So I'm not going to be showing you the project entirely. I will show you a little scrunched up version of it. So, yep, brioche. So I'm really excited for this one. I've been wanting to do something like this for a while now. It's not a crazy Stephen West style pattern. It's not weird shaping and all that sort of stuff. It's actually a very simple design, and it's mostly letting the brioche speak for itself, which I like. And so I just thought I'd share the yarn that I am using for this. So the neutral, this creamy neutral, is Pearl Soho's Line Weight, which is a single ply light fingering yarn. And this is 100% merino, 494 yards in 100 grams. Oops, sorry, there's the tag. So that's the neutral. And then this awesome ball of colourfulness is Sparkle Duck yarn. And this is on her solo base, so it's also single ply, and it's 266 meters in 100 grams, and it's 100% superwash merino in the stained glass colourway. Good. Really, really love this colour. There's quite a bit of pink in it, but there's also quite a lot of other colours in it as well, which show up quite nicely when it's being knit up. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that one grows, and I'm hoping to have this ready to be tested in a couple of weeks. So I will put this out there now. If you are interested in test knitting a brioche pattern, brioche shawl, please get in touch with me, because I know this is probably going to be not everyone's cup of tea. But yeah, if you're new to brioche as well, this is not, that would not exclude you from testing. I think this is actually quite a simple beginner's pattern. Once you get into the rhythm of it, it's actually quite a good flow. So if you are interested in testing for this design, like I said, it should be ready for testing before the end of the month. So please let me know. And the second thing that I am working on is this is really just a palette cleanser project, as it were. and I'm calling it my Scraptastic Grello hat. Because there is no design, there is no pattern for this. I am just making it up as I go. And this is where I'm at so far. So I did a really deep twisted rib brim out of my leftovers of Malabrigo Rios in the glitter colourway, which I knit a bankhead hat out of. I cast on 90 stitches. I was aiming for 100, but I only had enough of a long tail for 90, and I wasn't about to start over again. I was like, whatever, 90 is fine. 90 stitches, and then I switched to this grey and this yellow in this section here are my leftovers of the Lion brand. I think it's their LB collection. It's their Angora Merino. In this yellow and grey, and I can't remember the colourway names, but I knit my BZ hat out of these yarns. So I had leftovers of that, which I did this little Fair Isle motif, Fair Isle colourwork motif, which I literally just stranded across every other stitch. And this was just I haven't done colourwork in a long time, and I have a couple of colourwork patterns I want to work on. So this was just really sort of getting me back into the groove of doing colourwork, and I'm pretty happy with the tension there. It's not quite as stretchy as up here, but I think that's stretchy enough. It seems to be alright. We will see when we finish if this actually fits over my head. And then I have moved on and I've been striping up here. This yellow stripe is Malabrigo worsted in the Sunset colourway, which is from my Highlands Peak shawl, which is behind me. And then the grey above it, and here is the Pigeon colourway, which is also in that shawl. And then I also have a very tiny amount of the Rios left, which I've added in a single stripe in there. And I'm back to the grey. And then I kind of think I'm going to do another repeat of this on top. And we will see how this turns out. How much I'm just using up all the little scraps that I have left of the grey and yellows. Just been thinking about doing something with these together, and I've just sort of thrown it together. Who knows if it'll even work or what it will look like, or even if it will fit. If it doesn't fit me, then I will keep it and gift it to someone's child one day, and we will see. It'll be fine. Either way, it'll be a wearable hat for somebody. So that's it on my needles at the moment. I have a lot of needle adjacent projects though, so I thought I would talk a bit about some of those. First up, I have a garment that I want to knit that I've been wanting to knit for ages now, and it is the Hoodie Shawl Cardigan by Suzanne Summer. This pattern was very kindly gifted to me recently, I say recently, in the last couple of months by a viewer, and thank you so much. And I've been wanting to knit this pattern for ages, so I was so excited to get it, and I had the yarn picked out for it since September when I first went to New York. So, and this is a 3-colour shawl cardigan. So it starts out with a shawl-like shaping. So at the back it's like a triangular shawl, and then it's got some interesting construction which converts it into a cardigan, which I thought was quite cool. Again, I don't have the pattern printed out because my printer's on the fritz and I need Perry to fix it because he always manages to fix them in less than 5 minutes, and it always takes me hours to figure it out, and he's just better at that sort of stuff than me, so I'm going to let him deal with it. Anyway, so the 3 colours that I have picked out, I have 2 skeins of Madeline Tosh sock in the blackcurrant colourway, which is really lovely. It's a bit washed out on the camera at the moment. It's a little bit more rich, and that's a bit better. It's really lovely, rich sort of purples, and there's some bits of like bluish grey, some lighter sections. I really like that. Lovely tonal in colour. And there's a neutral tonal grey which is called the Downcast Donkey, and this is by the Verdant Griffin. This is their Little Traveller, so it's 100% superwash merino wool. It's their light fingering weight. It's 460 yards. And the 3rd colour is this beautiful skein of Wool and Vine yarns on Kristen's Strasser base, and this is the Enjoy the Silence colourway. This was one that she gifted me in September when I was over. So all these yarns I got in September for this cardigan, and I just never cast it on. Now I've read through the pattern, sort of given an overview, and I don't actually have enough of these 2 colours. I'm short on yardage for these 2 colours. If I go down a size. I'll have enough in this colour, but I'm still going to be somewhat short on this one. But the pattern seems to be written in such a way that you can sort of play with it a little bit in terms of where your colours go. So I have more than enough of this colour, so I think I can make it work, I think. I also think I might go up a needle size, so it's a slightly looser gauge than what the pattern calls for, which means I could knit the smaller size and still get the size I need for me. I was looking at some of the projects. There aren't that many projects for it. I think there's less than 30. But I was looking at the projects pages for people who've knit this pattern before as well, and I noticed this when I read through the pattern, is that the circumference for the upper arm, I was reading it and I was like, that looks really tiny. Really tiny. And I measured my upper arm and I was just like, even the largest size of that pattern isn't big enough to fit my upper arm without stretching. And I was just like, okay, now I know I don't have the skinniest arms in the world, but I certainly don't have the fattest arms in the world either. So, and as I said, I was reading through the project pages, and quite a few people had commented that the arms were tight, that they had to add extra stitches, that they had to make modifications on the sleeve. So I'm gonna have to pay attention to that and definitely make some modifications to the sleeve, add stitches there and stuff like that. So yeah, we will see how this works. This pattern seems like it's going to be an interesting one, and I'm really looking forward to it with my New York yarn. And I think these all go together quite nicely. So, very much looking forward to that. Another needle adjacent project I have are a pair of socks out of hedgehog fibres in the Vengeance colourway for my brother. So this was the one I talked about doing. I was going to do this during the sockathon, but one thing I realised during that month was because I was just zipping through socks like nobody's business, there were certain yarns that I want to knit with, that I want to knit socks out of, but I want to take my time with them. I don't want to rush through knitting them. So which is why I stuck mostly with patterns and Patterns Croy and Knit Picks yarns, because they're yarns that I know I can easily get again and they're not too expensive. So I didn't mind sort of just knitting those quickly and getting through them. But some of the other yarns, I'm just like, no, I don't want to rush through these. I want to enjoy knitting them. I want to enjoy the process, which is why I didn't knit more out of indie dyed yarns, even though I want to knit a lot of socks out of indie dyed yarns. I just didn't want to rush the process, especially with hedgehog fibres. This will be my first hedgehog fibres sock that I knit, and I didn't want to rush it. And plus these are for my brother for his birthday, and I wanted to take my time with them. Now looking at it again, I realised there is quite a bit of pink like undertones in this sock. So if he doesn't like the colours and he won't wear them, it is fine. I will give them to someone else and I will make him a different pair of socks. The only reason I've picked these out for him is because he really liked this colourway when I showed it to him when I was in London and I'd ordered these. So yeah. I'm sure he'll still wear them. I don't think he's that bothered, to be honest. He wears pink shirts all the time, so I don't really think a bit of pink on his socks is going to bother him all that much. So we will see how that goes. Other things that I'm working on, I am working on a couple of pattern collaborations with dyers, which I'm really excited about. So I'm sort of dreaming up some ideas for those. So you'll hear more about that in the future when they're ready. I have a colourwork cat and cowl design in mind that I want to get started on, which I'm really excited about. And I am thinking of doing a collection of sock patterns, sort of simple texture sock patterns. Something a little bit more interesting than just plain vanilla, but nothing overly complicated like lace or cables. Not that those are overly complicated, but something that just gives you something that doesn't take too much time or thought to knit, but is a little bit more interesting than just plain vanilla. And I'm also I'm working on the idea of developing a different short row heel that incorporates slip stitches throughout. Because obviously I can't release a pattern that includes a slip stitch fish lips kiss heel in it, because I wouldn't be able to give instructions for how to do the slip stitches over the heel section without giving away the fish lips kiss heel pattern, which is a paid for pattern, which you should totally go out and buy because it's only $1 and it is totally worth it. But So for that reason, I'm thinking of trying to develop my own heel potentially for my patterns. We will see how that goes. It's just a thought at the moment, so we will see how that develops. Yeah, and the only other thing that I have coming up on my needles, and this will probably happen this week, is some slippers. I mentioned last week, I think, that Perry wants me to make him some slippers, and whilst I don't have any felting yarn, as it were, in stash at the moment, suitable for making slippers, I've told him I can make him some simple house slippers by Temple of Knit, which everyone and their neighbour have been making recently, and I've been wanting to make some for a while now. I just never got around to it. So I said I could make him a pair of those, and I showed him the pattern, and I explained which yarn I was going to use. I've got quite a bit left over from the yarn that I used for his hat and cowl, the handbrake cowl that I knit him. So I'm going to use that because he likes that colour. And I was like, look, these will do for now. These will just be your house slippers. And then once we go back to the UK, when I'm back in the UK in March, I'm going to order some, probably some cascade yarn or something to make him felted slippers with. So yes, he's going to have to wait a little bit for those ones. But this is the second time he mentioned it, so he must really want these slippers. So I'm quite happy about that. So those will be coming up soon as well. And yeah, that's it, I think, for up and coming. And I am going to take another quick break here to gather all the prizes, and I will be back with all the knit along and giveaway news. Right, so stay tuned. Alright, so I'm back again, and this time I have loads of prizes to share with you guys. So thanks for sticking with me. So first up, we have the Vidacal. And that ended on the 31st of January, and we had 49 valid entries, so that included the people who get multiple entries for knitting the shawls. Right, so I've already done the random number generator. What I did this time was I listed out the prizes, and then I hit the random number generator as many times as I needed for the number of prizes I had, and I wrote down the numbers randomly against the different prizes. And then after, I went and checked who those were. I think one or two of them were, actually no, that one was fine because I pulled all the names into Excel. And so whoever number was plugged next to a particular prize, I found which person that was, plunked it in, and that's how I did it. So the prizes were even allocated randomly as well. Then I did the similar sort of thing for the January Soccer-thon. I just, which I'll come to later, but I did a similar sort of thing. I just listed out the prizes, random number generated all the numbers, randomly plugged them against the different prizes, and then went through the thread to match them up to the winners. So first up, Vidacal prizes. The first prize was one of my Mina Makes medium wedge project bags, and this is the size I use all the time for my 2 at a time socks. So it's a great size for 2 at a time socks. It's also a great size for shawls and other small to medium sized projects. And the winner of this one was number 25, and that was Julia from the Happy Knitting Podcast. So congratulations, Julia, and she is Webfee on Ravelry. So Julia, get in touch with me with your address, and this will be winging its way to you shortly. And the next prize that we have up is this skein of Serdar Heart and Soul, which is really good sock yarn, and a set of stitch markers. And this one goes to number 20, and that's Classical Girl, and that's Deanne. Deanne also happens to have a podcast, which the name of it is escaping me right now, and that's going to really bug me. One second, I'll go find out. Sorry, figured out. It's the Skeins in School podcast. I knew it was Skeins in something and it was really bugging me. I couldn't remember. Sorry, Deanna. So you win this lovely skein of yarn and stitch markers. So send me your address and I will stick this in the mail to you. So those are the physical prizes for the Vidacal. So Julia and Deanne, if you can get in touch with me and, like I said, send me your email. send me your address, and I will get these in the mail to you as soon as I can. I won't tag you guys in the thread or anything. I want you to find out by watching. So please get in touch. And then next up, we have some pattern prizes. We have the Estabelle shawl by Emily of Fibertown. And that was, the winner of that was number 9, and that was Mirjam. So Mirjam, if you can, please let me know that you have seen this and that you know that you've won. And I will get in touch with Emily and have her gift you the pattern. Then next up, number 34, who is Sidarm on Ravelry, Sidarm. That was number 34 in the thread, and she wins the breast cancer awareness scarf, which has been kindly donated to us. So please let me know that you've seen it, and I will get in touch with the designer and have her send that on to you. And then I've donated a pattern from my shop to the next winner, who was number 35, and that was that's Laura, who also happens to have a podcast. Her Ravelry name is Fluffy K, and she does the Corner of Knit and Tea podcast, which you should definitely check out. It's really fun. And so congratulations, Laura. Please get in touch with me. Let me know that you've seen this, and let me know which pattern you would like, and I will give that to you. So that's it for the VidaCal prizes. Thank you so much to everyone who has entered into that knit along. It was so much fun to see all of the socks, hats and shawls that you guys came up with, and all the different colour combinations that you came up with. It was so much fun, and I really appreciated it. And so next up, we have the January Sockathon prizes, of which there are many. There is a giant pile of them here, and so let's go through. Again, like I said, I just randomly allocated numbers against the prizes and then went and checked to see who the winners were. And I even added a couple of extra prizes since I talked to you about it before, because there were so many entries. There were over 500 entries into the finished objects thread, so I kind of felt like I wanted to give a little bit more. So the first one I am going to share, which I was really glad actually that I pulled this person, because she did amazingly well as well this month. And that was number 2. The prize winner was number 2 in the thread was the winner, and that was Monica Knits, and that's Monica from Norway. So congratulations, Monica. She knit, I think she was the closest one to like matching us. She did 20 plus socks last month. So she did really well in the beginning to keep up with us as well, with knitting 1 pair a day. So congratulations, Monica, and you win this beautiful skein of yarn by the Wool Barn in her tweed sock base in the Palmer Violet colourway, which is beautiful. I love this colour. So congratulations, Monica. If you can get in touch with me with your address, and I will send this out to you. Then next up, we have this lovely skein of sock yarn. Sorry, words are failing me this morning, it seems. This is by London House Yarns, and this is her sock duo. So 2 perfectly matched skeins. This is the Four Founders colourway, and Steph has very kindly also added some tea, and she sent me some minis to add to my blanket, which I did, and I had about half left, so I turned them back into minis, and you will get the other half of the minis as well. And this prize, again, this is completely by luck. Totally appropriate winner for this one, and that is number 378, Betty Rose. She that's Betty from the UK, and she did a full set of Hogwarts socks, so for the different houses, and I think 2 of them were the ones that she entered into the cow. So I thought it was totally appropriate that she won the Harry Potter themed yarn. So like I said, it's the Four Founders colourway. So congratulations, Betty, and those socks are fabulous. You should be very proud of them, and I hope you all enjoy this yarn. So please get in touch with me with your address, and these will come out to you in the mail soon. Then I have a project bag which isn't quite finished yet. I have to do the channel I have to sew. Still needs the drawstrings to be attached, but this is a mini drawstring bag that I have made, the poppy fabric, which I do no longer have any of that left, and it's this lovely sort of neutrally cream on the inside. And this is perfect for socks or a hat or any other sort of small project, because once it's scrunched up, it's about this sort of size. So it's a good small project bag. And the winner for this one is number 368, and that is Inga Rossu, who is Inga from Iceland. So congratulations, Inga, you've won this lovely project bag. So if you can get in touch with me with your address, I will finish up this project bag for you first, and I'll add the drawstrings, and then I'll stick it in the mail to you. So congratulations. Then next up, I have a skein of yarn which I got from Caroline in a swap that we did, and I thought this would make a really lovely sturdy pair of socks, and I wanted to share the love with you guys, and decided to add this to the prize draw. This is colorway Sienna Desert on her colourful base sock, 75% wool, 25% polyamide. Really lovely sort of burnt oranges and yellows and lovely sort of rusty reds running through there and stuff. Really beautiful. And the winner for this yarn is Amy Lynn, who is Amy from Oslo, and that was number 383 in the thread. So congratulations, Amy. If you can get in touch with me with your address, I will send this out to you. So I'm checking because I've got everything listed here on Excel so I don't miss anything. Then next up, I have a bunch of pattern prizes to share with you. The lovely Julia from the Happy Knitting Podcast sent me a copy of her latest shawl design, which is called the Crazy Days shawl. It looks like a really beautiful, simple beginner's shawl. It's got a little bit of lace detail, but nothing too complicated to make it too scary for a beginner. I think it's a lovely shawl pattern. And the winner for that is she also donated a copy for a giveaway. Jumping ahead of myself. So the winner for that was number 172, and that is Scraps on Ravelry, and her name is Amber from Tennessee. So congratulations, Amber. If you can get in touch with me and let me know that you have seen this, then I will get Julia to send you a copy of the pattern. Then the next 5 people have all won a copy of a pattern of their choice from my Ravelry shop. So congratulations to number 560, who is Pocketses, and that is Sharon from Washington. Number 34, which is Time for Stitches, and that's Nadine from Germany. And number 111, who is May Boulder, and she doesn't have a name on Ravelry, but I'm assuming it's May, and she's from Amsterdam. Number 268, who is Wendy Fye, who is Wendy from Scotland. And number 171, who is Patty Feller on Ravelry, and that's Patty from New Jersey. So congratulations, all 5 of you have won a pattern prize from me. And so please get in touch, let me know that you have seen this, and let me know which pattern you would like, and I will send that on to you. Now, last but not least, for the January Sockathon prizes, is the grand prize, as far as I'm concerned, because this prize is just awesome. And again, I'm really happy with the person who ended up winning this completely randomly, because I know she does a sock yarn blanket, so I hope she will enjoy this. She also happens to have a podcast. So the winner is number 342, Vegan Jilly. So congratulations, Jilly from Oregon. And she has the Knitting Broomstick podcast, which I mentioned a few weeks ago. So if you haven't checked her out yet, make sure you do. You've won this entire package of minis, which has a single mini from all of the socks that I've knit this month. So that's 35 minis in there for you. So they're actually in the order that I knit them as well. So this is the first one, and it goes that way. It just runs through like that. And then the last 5 are in this top section up here because, well, I ran out of space. And as you can tell, they are not individually labelled. Sorry about the glare, because it probably wouldn't have fit in the package otherwise. But I have added details on what all the yarns are, stuck it onto the back of the envelope, the package. So congratulations, Jilly. If you can get in touch with me with your address, this wonderful bundle of mininess will be winging its way to you shortly. So congratulations. That's it for the knit along prizes. I also did a sort of Instagram giveaway that I wanted to announce, and if I could just pull that up here. And so I went through and I picked out all the entries and I entered them into a spreadsheet, and I came up with 5 people who got the closest to getting the answer correctly. Now I think I'm somewhat going to disappoint a lot of you with how much I actually knit this month, because a lot of you were estimating way above the actual numbers. I think what a lot of you probably didn't, a lot of people got quite close to the right gram weight, but were really out on the yardage. And the only reason I can think for that is possibly because people weren't necessarily taking into account the fact that Patterns Croy sock yarn doesn't have as much meterage per 100 grams as regular sock yarn does. Patterns Croy is about 300 meters in 100 grams, whereas regular sock yarn has anywhere from 380 to 420 in a standard skein. So I think that might have been one of the reasons for the huge overestimation on the yardage compared to the weight. If that makes sense. Anyway, so the actual yardage that I knit last month was 8,572 meters, and the actual weight that I knit was 2,342 grams. So that's over 2 kilos, almost 2.5 kilos worth of yarn knit in a month. And I used 52 skeins of yarn. And so when I say skeins, I'm counting individual skeins of yarn. So if it came in 50 gram balls or skeins or 100 gram skeins or hanks, each counted as one. So I used 52 individually packaged bundles of yarn. Pretty good going, I think. And so the winner of the prize, which was the Yarn Enabler yarn, is the person who has who was the closest overall across the board. I mean, there were a couple of people who got really close, like down to like less than 10 grams difference from the actual weight that I knit, but were way out on the yardage. So it didn't seem fair for that person to win because they weren't close on both. So this person was close on both numbers. And that was the 1-to-1. And she was pretty close on both. So congratulations to, and that's your Instagram name, the 1-to-1. I haven't gone to check what your, to see if you have a name listed, but I will tag you in a post later today to let you know that you've won. And then if you get in touch with me with your address, I will send you this yarn. And then for there were, like I said, there were 4 other people who were incredibly close to the same sort of, who were incredibly close, but not as close as the 1-to-1. So you will all win a pattern of your choice from my Ravelry shop. And that is, the first person is Iril Knits, and on Instagram, then the Beady Butterfly, Raven Knitter, and Elizabeth for Pets. And I will tag you all in the winning post later today on Instagram to let you know that you've won. And then all you have to do is get in touch with me with the pattern of your choice and your Ravelry name, and I will send you the patterns. So congratulations to all of you, to all the prize winners. There is going to be a lot of prizes that go into the mail this next week. Let me just see if I can get everything onto one pile to show you how much there is. So all these prizes will be going out to you all very, very soon as you get in touch with me with your details. So congratulations again to everybody who's won. It was so much fun to do, and I just wanted to do the Instagram giveaway as a contest thing, as a bit of a thank you and a bit of to give back to you guys for all the support and everything this last month. So I hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, so other knit along news, moving on, we still have the sweater knit along going on in our group, and I will soon be joining with my striped hoodie cardigan thing, hoodie shawl cardigan, that's what it's called. So make sure you jump in on that one. It's a year-long knit along, and the first 3 months are being hosted with Nessa of the Kiltercraft podcast. So we will be drawing for prizes at the end of March for the first quarter. Then the next KAL we have going on, the next knit along, is the Knitting Expat Shawl KAL. That started on the 1st of February and is running through to the 31st of March. You can double dip, you can triple dip, you can however many times dip into other shawl knit alongs. You can knit any shawl you want. Crochet is allowed as well. I just call them KALs because that's what I'm used to saying. Scarves, wraps, etc. Anything that really counts for around your neck stuff. You can include whips as long as you have some work left on it. I mean, I'm not going to be overly stringent, but something a little bit more than just a bind off, preferably. If you knit one of my designs, you get 2 entries into the finished objects thread. So if you knit any other design, you get 1 entry per shawl or per garment you finished that you're entering. And if you knit one of my designs, you can enter your finished object twice, because why not? There will be prizes. I have some set aside already. I was going to show them to you this week, but I feel like we've gotten prize fatigue after all of that, and I will show it to you next week. I have a few things coming in, and I kind of want to get a list together so I can show you and explain everything clearly and not get confused. So I'm going to show you those all next week. Then another exciting thing that we have happening, which I am really looking forward to, it's something I've been wanting to do since last year and I'm finally getting around to it, is a swap within the group, within the Ravelry group. And this is going to be a expat yarn swap. So the concept behind this, and I touched on this briefly towards the end of last year when I was talking about my goals and plans for this year, is to match people together. The idea is I'm hoping that most people would be open to international swaps. If you're not and you only want to do domestic swaps or within like Europe swaps, then that is also fine. You just have to make that very clear so I can bear that in mind. But what I will do is I'll set up a thread on Ravelry for this, and there will be like a Google questionnaire that you will need to fill in, and then that makes it easy for me because it compiles all the information into one place, and so it makes it easy for me to match people up. And the idea would be that you will, the main criteria is to include a 100 gram skein of yarn from your country if you're swapping internationally, or that is local to you. And this is more important if you're only swapping domestically. So if, for example, if you're swapping domestically in the US, you might want to include a skein of yarn that's either locally dyed, locally produced, something that makes it relevant to your local area that you're from, to send to your partner, who is hopefully nowhere near your local area. And then other goodies, it would be nice to also include some other goodies from your area that are like sort of representative. Maybe it's specific sort of like sweet or chocolate or something that is made in your area that it's known for, or some postcards or some other sort of little trinkety things. And I'll also have some other ideas of things that you can include, but the main criteria will be a skein of yarn from your local area. And this is to give other people an opportunity to try yarn that is not from where they are, that they may not have come across before. And I've gotten some very interesting yarns from people in swaps from places that I would never have heard of before, from dyes I never would have known about before, and I just think it's a really interesting opportunity to share that sort of stuff, I think. Other things you can include if you would like to. Anything else that you want to include in the package will be up to you and your swap partner to agree and decide amongst yourselves what that would be. So you can add mini skeins into the swap if you'd like. You can add project bags, you can add notions pouches, notions, stitch markers. Any of that sort of stuff is not mandatory. It is up to you and your partner to decide how much you want to spoil each other. And so like I said, the main idea is to swap yarn that is from your local area, so you can hopefully learn a bit more about other places and yarns produced in other or dyed in other places. Sign-ups will be open hopefully from today or tomorrow. By the end of this week, the thread will be up on the group with the questionnaire for you to fill in. I won't be asking for people's addresses. I'm going to put it out there. All I'm going to ask you to send me to fill in on the questionnaire will be something along the lines of your Ravelry name, your full name, your location, country and city, whether or not you are willing to ship internationally or you only want to ship domestically. And I think that's probably going to be it, really. And I'll be able to sort people based on that. And then you and your partner will be matched up, and I will let you know who your partner is, and then you can get in touch with each other to swap addresses and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to be gathering a lot of like data on you guys, is all I'm trying to get at. And then the sign-ups will be open until the 20th of February, and then I will assign partners over the weekend and let you know who your partners are by the Monday 22nd of February, and then you will have until the 10th of March, so that's over 2 weeks, until the 10th of March to send out your packages, with the idea being that everyone or most people will receive their swap package by around the beginning of April. So in April, from beginning of April to the end of May, we're going to have a knit along called the Expat Knit Along. So the idea is to use, with that one, if you hadn't already guessed, is to use yarn that is not from your area, that is not from where you are. So for example, if you're from the UK, using yarn that's either produced or dyed in the US or South America maybe, or from other countries in Europe, just something that's different, that's not locally produced to you. I know there's this massive movement right now for using local yarns and all that, and that's great, and I think that's amazing, and I do think that's a good thing to do. But I think there's also so many wonderful yarns being produced and made and dyed all over the world. It would be a shame not to have an opportunity to use those too. So that's generally the idea. You don't have to take part in the swap to take part in the knit along, and vice versa. If you take part in the swap, you don't have to use the yarn you receive in the swap for the knit along. But the idea and the timeline that I've set for the swap is so that you can use the yarn that you get in the swap if you would like to for the knit along. But none of that is mandatory. It is just that if you would like to option, because also things can go wrong. Sometimes people get delayed. Things don't necessarily go out on time. The post is a fickle thing, which I will get to later because something really random happened again with the post this week. So yeah, anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think that's a good idea? Anyway, so I'll be opening up the thread soon, hopefully either today or tomorrow in the group, and I hope you guys will come and take part because I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, so that is it for this section. I am going to take another quick break because my throat is getting very dry. I need to go get a drink, and I will be back with the Q&A, my thoughts on socks, and acquisitions and all the other lovely things. This is going to be a very long episode. Take care. I'll be back in a second. Right, back again. Gone and had a drink, and now I'm back. Oh, I just realised I forgot to mention my Cozy Memories blanket's been hanging out on the back of my chair lately. I've been draping it over my legs a lot lately whilst I've been sat in here. And but yeah, back to that later. Q&A, question and answer section. I had a couple of questions this week. First up was from the lady Katie19X, and that's Katie. She's posted a few questions so far, and it's another one from her. She says, do you think that knitting socks 2 at a time gets them done faster than knitting 1 at a time? And what made you start doing them 2 at a time? Okay, well, first up, I've always knit my socks 2 at a time. I don't think I've ever knit a pair of socks 1 at a time before. I always struggled initially with the start of socks. And I always thought I would do toe up because I thought that would be easier doing toe up 2 at a time than starting from the cuff because it's less fiddly and all of that. But I had issues with fit with toe up socks, which I will talk about in a bit. But even so, I don't think I would ever want to do socks 1 at a time. It's just not something that appeals to me. It is not how I've ever knit socks. I've always, like I said, always done them 2 at a time. Never been inclined to want to knit them 1 at a time. I feel for me, it's definitely faster. I am the kind of person that the way my brain works is like when I'm finished with something, I am finished. That is it. I do not want to go back and do it again. I don't, all of that sort of thing. So when I knit my socks, when I'm done, I'm done. I'm done with the pair when I'm done. I don't finish one sock and be like, okay, now I have to start the next one. I know what my personality is like, and I probably would never knit a second sock if that was the case. Which is why 2 at a time always appeals to me, but also because I've always done it that way, I can't imagine not doing it that way. Just as much as people who have always knit their socks 1 at a time find it really hard to then switch to 2 at a time, because when you knit a sock individually, obviously you're going to get through the rounds quicker because you're only doing 1, but when you do 2, it's twice the work at that time, so it feels like it goes a lot slower. But I think overall it's probably quicker or maybe about the same as doing them one at a time. It just depends on how you are about second sock syndrome, if it affects you or not. If it doesn't bother you, then all power to you and knit your socks one at a time. But I know what I'm like, and I am pretty sure I would never knit the second sock. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that one. And like I said, I've always done them two at a time. My very first pair of socks were two at a time, toe up, and yeah. I've never been intimidated by a technique. I have to say, it did take me several pairs of socks before I figured out how to avoid getting tangles in my yarn. But I didn't care, I kept going because I knew that was the only way I would successfully finish socks. And like I said, a new technique doesn't worry me, this doesn't scare me. I'm always just like, well, I'll learn how to do it, it's not a big deal. People obviously know how to do this, so it's not impossible. The next question is from Life Full of Laugh, and that's Lisa. She says, her question is, what gauge do you typically knit your socks at? A lot of times people will talk about what needle size they use, and that's interesting, but what I'd really like to know is the gauge. I'm a pretty tight knitter, whereas some people tend to knit looser. Recently I've been knitting my socks on a US 1.5, 2.5mm and getting a gauge of about 9.5 stitches per inch. I'd love to hear what you usually get and what size needles. Thanks. By the way, I'm asking lots of podcasters because I'm curious about their answer. Oh, and I realised that because I've heard your question being answered by a few podcasters recently. So thank you for that question, Lisa. It is interesting, and it is actually the topic of my next section, which is thoughts on socks. So I will transition to that section now, and I will answer your question at the same time, which is great. Let me just grab my sock blockers. So I asked you guys last week if you would be interested in hearing my thoughts on socks and how my socks have worn over time. Sorry, I'm going to try and avoid the clanging as much as possible. And you guys all came back with a resounding yes, you'd love to hear about it. So these are the socks that I've been wearing for the last year since I started knitting socks. And I will give you a quick overview of them in roughly chronological order that they were knit. So my very first ever pair of socks are these. It's some sort of generic sock yarn, 75-25 blend. I cast these on in December of 2014. It literally must have been a couple of days, a few days before we left for Iceland. And I remember going to my knitting meetup with some of my knitter friends, and I just cast these on and I was still working on the toes, and I had crappy pony needles, 3mm, because I had nothing smaller at the time. I didn't have any smaller sock needles, It was 80cm cord, too short for two at a time, but wasn't going to stop me. And I was knitting on these at the meetup, and I remember distinctly being sat there at the coffee shop chatting with the ladies there. Most of them were seasoned sock knitters, and it was I just really appreciate the fact that they didn't laugh at me for how ridiculous this situation was. I have terrible laddering on these socks. I don't know if you can see that, because the pony needles that I had didn't have a smooth join at the cable, so they kept snagging. So I couldn't tighten my edge stitches too much, otherwise I couldn't get them over the needle. Yeah, and I ended up knitting these whilst we were in Iceland a little bit. I didn't knit too much whilst we were in Iceland, actually. Back then it was prior to my obsession really kicking in. Back then I still wasn't knitting when on holiday that much. But then I broke my leg, and I thought it was rather ironic that I was finishing my first pair of socks and I wouldn't be able to wear them for a while because I'd broken my leg. But I finished these on the flight back from Iceland. And and so I have two, and as you can see, these are really quite baggy. They're too big on the foot, and like I said, these are toe up with a short row heel. So these are quite, like I said, they're quite baggy on my feet. These are just house socks. I don't generally wear these with shoes these days because the foot is too long. So you can see that it's about easily an inch and a half too long there. And the bind off is not loose enough. I did Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, but because of how high up these socks come, it's still not wide enough for highest part on my calf. Even so, this is quite a loose gauge, I would say, for socks. But even so, I say that, it's not actually that loose a gauge for socks. I do think my gauge has loosened up a bit over time, but for 3mm needles, I don't think that's absolutely terrible. And I did measure the gauge for these the other day, and I can't remember what they are now, but they were something around 7.5 to 8 stitches per inch. So not bad. In terms of gauge, it's just too big. So I think fewer stitches would have been better for those ones. And they're worn pretty well, like I said, because I pretty much only wear these at home. I think I've worn them in shoes maybe twice, and they don't really show that much sign of wear and tear because they've been house socks. So, sorry, I've got something in my eye. The next pair that I have, also toe up. I think, was it these ones next, or was it those ones? I think it was these ones next. Chronologically, I'm trying to go in the right order. So chronologically, these ones were next, and this is Melisandre sock pattern. So it's like a ribbed texture pattern up here. Again, if you can't tell, these are massively too big for my feet. They are about 2 inches, 1.5 to 2 inches too big. I knit this out of sock yarn that I picked up when I was in Cape Town in South Africa. This is Nurturing Fibres sock yarn, I can't remember the colorway name, but yeah, I did these toe up as well, and as you can see, I ran out of yarn because my rib is quite short. But if I'd done the foot shorter, I'd have had enough to get these as long as I would like. This was the first time I did the Fish Lips Kiss Heel, which I really loved. And the issue I was having with toe up socks was because of the way the Fish Lips Kiss Heel has you measure the fit and stuff. I didn't know what I was doing wrong or what, and I was trying it on my feet, and I just wasn't allowing enough negative ease. I was knitting them for my foot size, and then they stretch out over time, and now they're too big. So whilst I do still wear these occasionally, I don't really wear them in shoes that often. So, and this is 100% merino yarn. You can see they haven't worn too badly. They're a little bit fuzzy, a little bit fuzzed up. But like I said, these probably would show more sign of wear by now if I wore them more frequently in shoes. Sorry. Yeah, this is the other one. It looks alright. It's a little bit fuzzed up. But like I said, I've only worn these in shoes maybe a handful of times since knitting them. So they've held up pretty well. And just a note, I always hand wash my socks, my hand knit socks. I don't think I've ever machine washed any of them. Yeah, just putting it out there. I kind of feel like if you make the effort to make hand knit socks, then make the effort to hand wash them. I mean, I can understand for other people, but for myself, that's how I feel about my socks. This is the next pair that I did, also with Fish Lips Kiss Heel, also massively too big, and also toe up. So you can imagine after several pairs of toe up socks that end up too big in the foot, you may want to try something different. And these are just little short ankle socks that I knit, and I believe this is a superwash. This is a merino nylon blend yarn. Again, these are worn pretty well, and again, I haven't worn these too much in shoes because of this whole issue. But these have held up, like I said, they've held up pretty well. They've got cat fluff on them, but not much other sign of wear. Then next up, I have the first one that I still own. I gave my first full-length sock with a heel flap and gusset my dad now has. But I think that was the first one. Maybe this was the first one. I can't remember. Anyway, so this is the only sock that I have that isn't... I have 2 pairs of Rose City rollers, which I'm wearing at the same time, one over the other, which both have heel flap and gussets, but they're a bit too big, so I just wear them around the house. But this was a sock blank that I picked up from I Knit Fandango last year, from I Knit or Die, from their booth, and this is one of their sock blanks that I knit up with a very basic slip stitch pattern there. And I did a slip stitch heel, and these I have worn a lot. These always come with me on trips. I wear these like crazy. I always wear them in my shoes. and these still holding up pretty well, but they're definitely showing signs of wear. I'm not sure how well you can see. That heel is all fuzzed up. A bit above the heel is pretty fuzzed up as well. It's starting to felt quite significantly around this area, and along here you can see where it's all fuzzy, and around the toe again, but it's, you know, it's held up pretty well. Like, it doesn't look that bad at all, and a bit of felting doesn't worry me with socks. If anything, I kind of feel like it makes it nice and cushy. And yeah, and I've noticed a theme with all of my socks. They all seem to wear around this area and or along this side edge of the foot on both sides, and just this area of the toe on both sides seem to get quite felted. And I think that it's possibly to do with my shoes. I wear those clear Converses, which are pretty much the only shoes that I wear my socks in. Occasionally I wear them in some trainers or other shoes that I have, but 90% of the time they are worn in those Converses, and those Converses are about half a size too big for my feet. And I think that may be part of the reason why they rub quite a lot, especially at the back of the foot, because the shoes are a little bit loose, so they move on my foot a bit. And I think it's also just to do with the way the shoes are on the inside in terms of how they rub on the sides of the sock. All in all, I'm still perfectly happy with how they're wearing. They look pretty good, and these socks are over 6 months old now. I knit them at the beginning of summer last year. Must have been around the end of June. So, felt up pretty well, I think. Next up, I have another pair of rainbowy socks. Pop these onto blockers, to the blocker rather. So this was also top down, a little bit big on the foot, but not too badly. A similar sort of wear. This is Knit Pick Stroll hand paints in the County Fair colourway, and I did the whiz bang sock pattern on these. You can see a little bit of wear there, but otherwise it's held up really well. There's not much felting at all. A little bit of fuzziness around the back of the leg here, Bishop's Kiss heel. And I really like how these have held up. Again, these were knit over the summer at some point, and these have, like I said, holding up pretty well. There's a little snag here, which I think, I'm not entirely sure, might have been some Velcro snag that, I don't know. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how these are holding up. You can see a bit of the fuzziness there. And yeah, so Stroll yarn, I'm very happy with how this is holding up over time. Next up, I have my pond socks. My Baron Voleur yarn in the pond colourway. These are a little bit big for me. This is really where I learnt the whole lesson of I can use fewer stitches and get the same fitting sock. So whilst these fit amazingly well when I first knit them, and they were, if anything, a little bit tight on the foot when I first knit them as well, they have stretched out quite a bit. I don't know how well you can tell. You can tell how baggy these are now. They're not tight on the blocker at all. They fit me fine, but they are a bit looser in the leg. So again, I learnt my lesson that my socks stretch out over time. They don't necessarily bounce back completely. So I knit my socks with fewer stitches with the idea that they'll be nice and tight initially, and even if they loosen up a bit, they won't get too loose. Again, Bishop's Kiss heel on this one. These socks have worn really well, very minimal fuzzing. There's a little bit of fuzzing on this side. My main issue with this sock, with these socks, is how much they bleed. These still bleed quite significantly. There's quite a bit of fuzziness on this one. Not too bad. I don't know, you probably can't even tell that much. These and the other pair, the September Forest colourway, they do bleed quite significantly. These ones in particular have they've changed colour. They're not the same colour they were when I first knit them up. But you can see the wear around here is literally just a straight line down here. The heel is pretty worn on these ones, and I use a contrast heel of Lion Brand sockies. But again, I wear these socks all the time. The dye transfer on this is quite bad. I've contacted Vicky about it, and she said no one else has really commented on that. So maybe I just got a funny batch of the yarn that has bled a lot. But like, I've got towels that are now stained from this, and the bottom of the sole of my Converse shoes are stained with these colours. I think at one point my toe got stained orange from having worn it all day. I don't mind, like I'll still wear them. I wear them all the time, as you can tell by how fuzzed up they are. And I hand wash them. I just know now that I need to hand wash these pairs on their own. They can't go in the water with anything else. I've tried colour catchers. I've tried all sorts of things. Nothing seems to stop the bleeding. I put the colour catchers in. I put like 3 sheets of colour catchers in the sink, and the water was still like red. So like I said, they've bled so much I don't think they're the same colour anymore. I've got a square of it in my blanket so you can see what the colour looked like. It's like that. And you can see how different that is. Most of the yellow and orange has sort of gone pink. You see how different that is. So yeah, I am somewhat concerned now about washing this blanket because it is right next to this pale square here. So I'm gonna have to be careful with that one. But that's really my only criticism, I guess, is how much these two pairs of socks bleed. But I did get this yarn from Vicky early last summer, so I'm not sure if she's changed her dyes or her dye process at all since then. But like I said, she hasn't heard from anyone else who's had similar problems with these colorways. So so I think I may have just got a dud batch of these yarns. But I do love these socks. I love the yarn. It's so soft. It's wonderful to wear. And I do love wearing them, and I do keep wearing them. And I don't necessarily care that they bleed. I will keep hand washing them individually. But those are just my thoughts on those. And like I said, I think they've held up really well, even though they've got fuzzies and they've slightly felted around the back of the foot and around the toes. It's nothing significant, and I'm not worried about these developing holes anytime soon. These feel like they're going to be really hard wearing socks. And this is on her barefoot sock base, 80/20 merino nylon or merino polyamide. Then next up I have this pair of hollyberry socks that I knit last December, and I knit a pair for my mum. Like I did the inversible concept that contrasts the cuff, heel and toe. And I am not overly impressed with these socks. I only did these in November, sorry. End of November, and they are incredibly fuzzed up. They are probably as fuzzed up or more than my the blank socks that I showed you earlier, and they're really fuzzing up around the back of the heel. And again, this might have something to do with my shoes. I'm not entirely sure. I did wear these in boots a couple of times when we were in Iceland, but I haven't been particularly hard on these socks compared to my other socks, and I don't know how well you can see how fuzzed up they are along here. But yeah, so I wasn't overly impressed. And the red, these are both West Yorkshire spinners. This red bleeds, which I was surprised in a commercial yarn to find that the yarn was bleeding. So I don't know. I'm not as impressed with these as I was hoping to be. Everyone goes on about how amazing this yarn is and how much they like it, and I've knit up the Kingfisher colourway, so that didn't bleed, thankfully. But the blue one, the solid blue West Yorkshire Spinners yarn that I knit up, that bled blue. So I don't know if it's something to do with their solid colours that bleed, but that's just been my experience with it. Like I said, I hand wash all my socks, and whenever I gift socks to people, I always tell them to hand wash them initially in case they do bleed. So I don't know. I wasn't particularly impressed with the West Yorkshire Spinners. I don't know. Maybe I just had some bad luck with it. And the last pair I have to show you and talk to you about are my Wool Barn Iceland socks. So this was in her Wellington colourway, self-striping. Sorry, they're covered in cat fluff. They are clean. I just washed these the other day, but they're still covered in cat fuzz. These have held up really well. These are the last socks that I've knit that I have been wearing, that mine. I do have other pairs that I've knit that I haven't worn yet. They're ever so slightly fuzzed there and ever so slightly on the back of the leg here. I wore these quite a bit in New York recently, and they're holding up really well, and I really like it, really like the colours. These bleed ever so slightly. It's just more like it's like a slight tinge to the water, which is possibly more just the grime coming out of it, as well as I think a bit of the darker colours coming out. But I do wash these in like a warm water bath, so they do get clean. They're holding up pretty well, and I'm really happy with these ones, and they feel really lovely to wear. Again, these are a little bit baggy now, which is why my standard now for 2.25mm socks, I do 60 stitches rather than 64, because these are 64 and they are ever so slightly baggy on my foot, on my leg and my foot. So I've gone down to 60 stitches. So my gauge for my socks on average, for 2.25mm, I get around 8.5 to 9 stitches per inch. On 2.5mm, I get anything from 8 to 8.5 stitches per inch. And on 2.75mm, I usually get 8 stitches per inch. But I thought that my gauge had loosened over time. I thought that now my gauge was a lot looser than it used to be. Turns out it's not. I just realised I can knit tighter socks and they still fit me. I don't have to be quite so worried about it because they do stretch out. So I started by knitting socks on for myself with 72 stitches on 2.25mm needles. I can now, with the same gauge, knit socks with 60 stitches on 2.25 and they fit me just as well. Because I found that the higher stitch count just meant whilst they fit nicely initially, they did get really baggy after a while. So just my thoughts on that. I just find that I like about 2.5 inches of negative ease with my socks. 1 inch is just not enough, it stretches out. So I like a nice tight fitting sock. Yeah, so what I think I might do differently going forward, like I said, I've lowered my stitch count. I find that I can knit a shorter length on the foot. I'm a UK size 8, which is a European 42, and I think it's an American 10. So I don't have tiny feet, I don't. But these socks, which I don't think is massive lengthwise, so this is where the foot starts to the end of the toe. These socks are slightly too long for my foot, so because they've stretched out over time. So I've realised that if I knit socks that are tight on my foot to begin with, they stretch out after a couple of wears and they become the perfect size. So that's my 2 cents on socks and what I have found with my sock knitting over time, how my socks are worn, my gauge. And I do knit my socks on all those different size needles from 2.25 up to 2.75. And I quite like the gauge that I get. I think somewhere between 8 and 9 stitches per inch is a good sort of a denseness, I think. Anything more than that, it just starts to get really dense. So yeah, if you have any specific sock related questions or any questions in particular, feel free to drop me a message or drop me a comment in the questions and suggestions thread on the group, and I will be happy to answer them on the podcast. Right, I'm going to take another quick break and grab a sip and I will be back. Right, so for upcoming news, I don't really have anything new to share. I'm going to the Curious Handmade Country House Retreat in March, which I'm really looking forward to. And that is it so far for knitty related adventures. Shop news, nothing new to report there. Shop is still closed. I need to get working on some bags. And now on to acquisitions, which I'm sure you guys are all really eager to see. I have some more acquisitions from Vogue Knitting Live to share with you all today. So first up, Eric from Six of Swine and myself, we visited the Jill Draper Make Stuff booth, which was beautiful, and I saw some of her Empire skeins, which were just massive and gorgeous and lovely, but I couldn't bring myself. But what I did get was a couple of skeins of her Esopus base, which is her, I guess it's like a light fingering or fingering weight yarn. How beautiful are these? They're just my colours, I can't help it. Green and purple, it's just, oh, that's got to be a screenshot, isn't it? But the purple is Stanley Plum and the green is Cypress, and I just love these two shades. It's favourite shades right there. And all you need to do is throw in some grey, and that is just And I love it. Her Esopus base is 500 yards, 457 meters in 4 ounces, which is about 113 grams. And it's 100% American grown and spun superwash merino. It's got a really nice twist to the yarn. And so yeah, I think this would be beautiful in some sort of project that I have no idea what it's going to be yet, but it would be beautiful. I picked up a really, really chunky soft skein. It's not chunky yarn, but the skein is chunky. This is yarn that I had seen all around New York. I'd seen when I went up to Connecticut. I had seen it at Annie & Co. earlier in the week when I'd gone with Perry. I'd seen it the last time I was in New York when I went to Argyle Yarn Company. And when I saw it at Vogue Knitting Live, I was like, okay, fine, I have to buy it then, because I just see it everywhere and I keep wanting to buy a skein, and then I keep telling myself, no, I don't need it, and then I keep wanting it and then I don't. Anyway, so I finally caved and I bought it at Vogue Knitting Live. It is Gala Yarns Prime Alpaca Naturals, it's 100% superfine alpaca made in Peru. It is a DK weight, so it's a light worsted, it's a DK weight. 660 yards, so 603 meters in 8 ounces, so which is 227 grams. That's a lot of yarn. And this is colour number 303 Mist Grey. That's the tag. Maybe on the other side of the tag it calls it Prime Alpaca Wolf Grey, which I quite like the sound of better, wolf grey rather than mist grey. But I think this was like the medium grey tone. They had a darker one and they had a lighter one and they had a more natural cream coloured one as well. And this is going to be a beautiful shawl design that I have yet to come up with. Nice big scrumptious alpaca warm shawl, I think. I'm really looking forward to that. It'll be yarn bid going on. So yeah, lovely and squishy and soft. You see what I mean? Purple, green and grey just makes my heart sing. Then Eric and I also stopped by another booth called Kirsty Cat Designs, and she had some beautiful, bright, funky coloured colourways for her yarn. Honestly, that place was like my happy place. I loved the yarn in there and the colourways and stuff. So the first colourway I picked up, the first was just a sock yarn blend. And so this is just sock colour, and it's the Wildfire colourway, because how perfectly that just looks awesome. This bright pop of like neon in the rich reds. And so this is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and it is very soft. It is nice and plump yarn, and I'm really looking forward to making a pair of socks out of these and seeing how they knit up. Love that shot of like green that goes into orange right there. It's really fun. And I also picked up this skein, which is called Nightwood. This is 100% superwash merino, and this, just love these colours. How well you can see that there. And Eric actually had this colourway first. He wasn't sure between this and a different one, and he put this one down in the end because it didn't have merino in it, nylon in it, sorry. And I immediately grabbed it from him before the yarn even touched the table. I was like, I'll take that, because I'd been eyeing it up, but I didn't want to take it from him if he really wanted to get it. So I let him have first dibs, and when he put it down, I took it. So got these two colours. Really happy with that. So that's all I'm going to share with you guys this week in terms of yarn. I did have one other thing that came in the mail from a lovely viewer, which I wanted to share with you. And first of all, just how adorable is that card? Love it. And she very kindly wanted to send me something, and yeah, honestly, amazing package. Absolutely love it. She sent me a project bag, but not any project bag, a New York themed project bag, because how awesome is that? So it's a New York street map print, which I just think is awesome, and it's a drawstring, and it's so well made. I don't believe she has a shop. We'll have to double check. I don't think she does, but I just love the detail on the drawstring with these glass beads. I think they're glass beads. They're beautiful. It's one on either side. There's one of these removable clips with the D-rings, and the strap, which has like a tape measure on it, and also the same fabric. This lovely canvas at the bottom. And the lining is a beautiful sort of like stars and polka dot theme, which I love. This is perfect. Thank you so much. And it's a massive sweater size bag, and I think the yarn and my sweater for the striped hoodie cardigan is going to go in here, because the yarn I got in New York in a bag with New York on it kind of goes, right? And let me pop that down. And she also sent me this awesome little boxed notions pouch thing to go in there as well, which is perfect. Zipped, and yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you so much. And this was from a lovely viewer called Therese. So thank you so much, Therese. I really love it, and honestly, it couldn't have been more perfect. So that is it for acquisitions this week. I actually offered Therese to gift her a couple of my patterns as a thank you for sending me this project bag and notions pouch. And she said that she has more patterns in her library than she could possibly ever knit, and she asked that I pay it forward to you guys and select 2 people to win a pattern from my store. So what I'm going to do is I am going to set up a pattern giveaway thread in the group. I've not decided whether or not there's going to be a prompt for this one, but at a minimum you'll have to post which pattern you would like from my shop, and I will randomly draw a winner next week. Randomly draw 2 winners next week to each win a pattern from my shop. But there may or may not be a prompt. You'll have to check the thread to see if there is. And yeah, so good luck to you guys, and there will be 2 winners announced next week. And I will just gift you the patterns that you have said you want in the thread. Okay. And moving on to my knitting tip for this week. I had a few people ask on Instagram yesterday about how I wind my minis. And it's like you read my mind, because whilst I was winding all the minis this week, which I'll get to in a second, I decided I would not finish one to show you how I wind them and all of that. So, as you saw earlier from one of the prizes, I've been winding minis like a crazy person. This is just a couple of packs of minis I've put together for future swaps and stuff. I usually do about 8 mini skeins in my swaps, and this is just a Ziploc bag that I got. I thought they were quite cute with the texture pattern, with the pattern on them. And these still need to be labelled. I've just put them in bags for now so I can show you. This is what a couple of them look like. And I've also got a bag of minis for Marsha. We're going to do a little mini trade. And so this literally has a mini skein from all the yarns that I used this last month. The only ones that aren't in here are ones where Marsha and I knit the same colourways. So I think there were a few of the Patterns Croy and the Knit Picks Felici that we both knit the same ones. So we're not going to send each other those because it doesn't seem like much point. And I think there was 1 or 2 where I didn't have enough yarn for even a second mini, so there's only there might be a couple missing in here, but there's still I think about 30 or 31 mini skeins in this bag, which I still need to label, but they're there. So how I wind my minis, I just use a 12-inch ruler. This was a clear one, but it's just a 12-inch ruler that I have, and this and I wrap my yarn around these. So you can either count your wraps to see how much you are putting into your mini in terms of number of feet, and then you can figure out how many wraps make a yard, and you can figure it out from there. It's actually quite simple. Oops, sorry. So all I do is I just I hold the yarn, the end of the tail of the yarn with one finger as I begin wrapping. Then once I've wrapped a few times, I can take that off, and then just keep wrapping until I have added however much I'm going to add. And I actually use a scale and just wrap until I've 5 grams has come off the ball or whatever my leftovers are. So this is about 5 grams on here now. So what I do when I finish wrapping, I just leave the end hanging on there, and then I take it off. I don't tie my minis because they're so small, doesn't seem like much point. There you go, you've got your loop, and then just twist. I just twist, and then I don't twist it too tightly either because then it gets difficult to take it off. I just put my thumb in the middle, bring it up, and then I slip my thumb through here to create so I can grab this side, pull it through, let go, and then sort of just shape it. And that's how I get my minis. Like I said, nothing fancy. It's not the prettiest looking mini in the world. There are some really beautiful mini skeins out there that people wind up really nicely and have like fancy nitty noddies and stuff. But in a pinch, if you don't have a nitty noddy or anything else to use, a 12-inch ruler, foot-long ruler does the job. You could use a book. You could use anything that is like straight and firm enough for you to wrap around to create a mini skein. That's how I make mine. And actually, I quite like the size that I get because they fit really nicely into these pouches. So yeah, that's how I make my minis. And I hope that answers your questions on that one. Finally, week in review. I'm going to try and go through this quickly because this has gone on for so long already. I really hit a wall with my sock knitting on Thursday. I've never hit a wall with my knitting ever. And on Thursday, it kind of got to a point, it was painful, like not physically hurting my hands painful. It was painful to sit there and just be like, why is this not working? Like my hand-eye coordination was just not working that day. It was such a struggle to get through the knitting that day. But that morning especially, it was just, nothing was working for me. It was not going right. I kept making mistakes, I kept dropping stitches. It was just didn't want to happen. Thankfully, I got like a burst of energy suddenly after lunch and managed to keep going and broke through the wall, and it was fine for the rest of the weekend. And also another issue that I've had with this sockathon in January was how cold it's been. I find it's really difficult for me to knit when my hands are cold because then everything gets stiff and I can't move my fingers as quickly. And that was a big issue for me this last month. The thing that slowed me down the most with my knitting has been the cold. And this last week in general has been freezing over here. It's been so cold. I read actually yesterday, it got so cold in the UAE that it snowed in the mountains over there. Like they actually got snow for the first time in however many years, which is insane. It got down to minus temperatures in centigrades over like in the mountains over there. So that's crazy. It's been down to like the low 50s and like high 40s over here Fahrenheit. So around 10 to 12 centigrade. And it is so cold. It's so cold. And I swear the house inside is actually colder than outside. So on Sunday, Perry came back from work with an electric radiator, which is sat right here next to me. You can't see it. But it is now my new best friend. Unfortunately, Perry's the one who has to lug it up and downstairs because it weighs like 20 kilos and my back can't handle that. So in the evenings when he gets home, we take it upstairs and plug it in so our bedroom gets nice and warm. And in the mornings, he brings it down and plugs it into my craft room. So my craft room gets nice and warm when I come down here, and it stays pretty warm during the day. It doesn't work that well in our living room because my mum will know. Our living room, dining room, downstairs space is one giant open plan space, and we have really high ceilings. Our ceilings are massive. So it would never heat the space properly, if that makes sense. So it works really well in my craft room. It gets really nice and toasty in here, which is great. And it works really well in our bedroom as well. The bedroom gets really nice and toasty, and it's just a pleasure to wake up in the morning versus like just getting up and freezing for like the first hour or so. So yeah, I love the radiator. That's basically what I'm trying to say. The boys don't know what to make of it. Hugo doesn't like it very much because it has a very low level like buzz that it lets off because it's an electric radiator, and he's not overly fond of that. And Derek just seems to manage to generate his own heat and like sleeps in a curled up ball in a box, and he just gets all nice and warm and toasty. So he's not overly fussed about it either, which I was surprised about. I thought they'd be more into it, but I guess not. What else was I going to say? Oh, yes. So I said I had a funny postal story to share again with you guys this week. So I've only ever had instances where a package has been lost in the mail 3 times since I started my Etsy shop. So one time, which I told you about last time, a couple of weeks ago, was where the package actually didn't get lost. It just went to the wrong address, and it finally got delivered to the correct address, and that was one that an order was placed in November of last year. Then another one was one that I do believe genuinely got lost, and I refunded the person for the bag. And the third one was a package that was a bag that was ordered on the 29th of August last year, and it just never showed up. And so both me and the buyer, who I've been in touch with about this, we both believe that it just got lost. It just wasn't gonna it wasn't showing up. It was lost. So imagine my surprise when I went to the post office this last week, and there was a note in my mailbox saying that there was a package I had to go collect, and the name on the package was really familiar. And I was like, I know that name. Why is that person sending me something? Pretty sure I sent her something. And I was thinking about this as I'm walking into the post office and waiting for them to go get the package. I'm going running through my head. I was like, that can't be right. No, it can't. And then what do? They hand me the package that I'd sent. It was returned to sender. 5 months later, it got back to me because apparently it had been unclaimed. I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but thankfully the bag has not been lost. It's back to me, and I will be resending it back to the person who bought it. So I guess that's not that bad in the end. The bags, for the most part, have been found. Only one has been genuinely lost. And the other two eventually one made it back to me, and one made it to its final destination, and hopefully this other one will get to its final destination soon. A couple of days ago on Monday, I went to Saudi Arabia for the day. We had to go to renew our visas. I didn't physically have to do anything other than physically be in the country in order for that to happen. So that's been done. I took a bunch of stuff with me that day to sort out. I sorted out my knitting journal and a few other bits and pieces. I got caught up in Ravelry messages and all of that sort of stuff. It was good, and I didn't take any knitting with me specifically, so I wouldn't do any knitting, and it felt very strange. It did feel quite weird. And yesterday I spent some time making minis, and I started my new design. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to finally getting back into the swing of things. I have a lot of laundry to do. I have like 2 weeks worth of laundry to catch up on, and bunch of errands I need to run out and do, and all sorts of boring, normal day-to-day stuff. So this has been possibly another really long episode. I think we're probably close to 2 hours again. So I will leave you with that. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me today. If you have any questions for me, please leave me a comment in the questions and answers thread or in the chatter thread for this episode. I realised I don't actually have a question for you guys this week, but I've had quite a lot of questions for you lately, so maybe you'll have a week break. It won't be too bad. Do let me know if you have any questions about socks. Maybe I can help answer them for you. And yeah, I look forward to chatting to you guys next week. So thanks for joining me today, and take care. Happy knitting. Bye.